Good afternoon. I see everybody talking at their table, so that tells me that you're being festive and you're excited, that you enjoyed your internships, that you made solid relationships with those that work in the departments and divisions that you worked in, the employees, whoever your supervisors were, and also the other students that were a part of that. So that's to be celebrated because relationships matter. Relationships matter, networking matters, and networking is not networking for networking's sake. Networking is about creating solid relationships so that now or in the future you can call on that other student that was in the program with you. You can call on that other person that was your supervisor. So we are hopeful that this has been a fantastic experience for you. Why do we do this? We do this because we know that internships, mentorships, leadership is a shared experience. You have to give some and you get some. Coaching people through how to do and how to be productive is critically important. How do I know that? I've had people coach me all of my life in various ways. Relationships matter. The man who I have the honor of serving as the Chief of Public Affairs for, the mayor of this city, I met him 25 years ago. Relationships matter. Who knew back then that he would be mayor? He was a first-term city council person. I was fresh out of college working at CMHA, the Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority. He was interested in turning around a whole community of public housing. I was inside of public housing, and my job was to work with the local elected official who had the majority of public housing. Relationships matter. 20 years later, he ran for mayor of the city of Cleveland. I had gone on to get my undergraduate degree. I was in a program that had emphasis on mentorship and fellowship called the National Urban Fellows. We have Charmin Leon, Sergeant, stand up, Charmin Leon. Sergeant Charmin Leon went through that same exact program. She was 10 years behind me, but relationships matter. I met her because we did affiliation programs, and now she's here. She's doing wonderful leadership in our Cleveland department, in our Cleveland Police Department. So relationships matter. Mentorships matters. This director of our HR department, we grew up in the same church. I'm about 20 years older than Nicole. When I saw her when I came here 13 years ago, I remembered her. I've had the opportunity to watch her grow, mature, and develop into the leader that she is, into the strong leader that she is, in a department that's full of leaders that are focused on building the next set of leaders for the city of Cleveland. So we put a lot of emphasis into internships because we know that it makes a difference. We hire many of the people that have interned with us over the years. Relationships matters. In addition, the man to my far left, to your right, Dr. Michael Scope. Dr. Scope and I met probably about 15 years ago when he first came to Cleveland. I recruited him to sit on a board that I was on that was focused on education, college education, connecting people to college, connecting a career pipeline. Why does that matter? That matters because he, like me, like so many of you, first generation college graduate, want to make sure that we lean back, reach as we climb in this world of work, so that we can make a difference as public servants, that we're civically engaged, and that we are not selfish, but we are selfless in our investment, right? Our investment in people to do the right thing. So I am excited today because the person that you will hear immediately following me, and I'll invite to the podium, is our mayor. He is the 56th mayor of the city of Cleveland. He is the only fourth-term mayor that our city has ever had. Solid leadership really solid leadership he has, and he has invested in his people. The majority of our cabinet, I would guesstimate between 75 and 80% of our cabinet, the executive leadership, have been in place since he's been mayor. We're in the midst of our 13th year. Consistency matters to affect the change that we have in our city. And it's a wonderful thing to see the reports about our city becoming a destination city and all of the economic development that is occurring and community development that is occurring in our city. But more important than that is people, and making sure that our citizens are connected to employment and are ready. And that's what internship is about. So of all of the 65 of you that interned here, representing 20 colleges and 5 universities across this community and across this state, we want you. We want you to come back and take the seats that we occupy. We don't want to sit in these seats. We need to build the next generation of leaders, and that's why internships matters. So at this time, please celebrate with me our mayor, Mayor Frank G. Jackson.
You know, I want to congratulate you on being interns for the city of Cleveland in the various departments and divisions. And I really want to thank you for participating and considering public service as a career. Public service is an honorable profession, but I often say that it is not made for everyone. Everyone cannot be a public servant. You will do a lot of work, but you won't make a lot of money. But the one thing about it is that you will have the opportunity to impact the lives of individuals, families, and community. That you will have. But again, public service is an honorable profession, but it's not made for everyone. And as Chief Walker Minor said, it is about relationship, and it is about the exposure of something to something new that helps you to frame where you want to go in the future. I'm going to tell you a true story. I was in law school, and I was older when I got to law school. I was probably in my early 30s, and most of the young people there were finished their 4 years, so they were like early 20s, 22, maybe 23 years old. And so here it is, I'm studying, doing briefs in class, 14, 15 hours a day, just to get a seat. And some of these young people, the kids, would come in with a hangover and get an A. So I'm trying to figure out what's up, right? I say, is it me? What's up? Well, what I found out was that their ability to get that A and not have to put in the same level of effort that I had to put in to get a C was based on the fact that they had exposure. They either had family members or friends that were lawyers or judges. That was not unusual for them to have conversation around the court and the law in their household. They did internships at law firms. So when they came to law school, they knew what they wanted to be, and they had exposure to that profession and that activity. So they had a point of reference as they were reading the cases, doing the homework briefing. They had a point of reference that they could go back to. I had none of that. So it is important. And when I became mayor, one of the things that I decided to do was to make sure that we could have young people have the greatest amount of exposure that we could give them to do two things: to learn the trade in which they want to go into, or to make up their mind because they've been exposed to something that they had never thought of. So again, I want to congratulate you on your being an intern. Thank you on your consideration of being a public servant, okay? And now, if I walk out, I'm not trying to be rude. I do have another meeting, so I will be here for a little while longer, but I do have to go upstairs in a few minutes. So thank you very much.
I'd like to introduce our guest speaker. His bio is actually in your program. I won't read it in its entirety, but we choose our keynote speakers very specifically for the Internship Luncheon. We want to make sure that whoever we have speaking to this audience is someone not only that you can relate to, but someone that you can gain valuable experience, knowledge, and challenge you for the future. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Michael Scope from Tri-C Community College. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Oh, not bad. Well, so first, let me begin by thanking Director West for having me here, as well as Janet Schiavone and my good friend and longtime colleague, Robin. Robin's is somebody I've known for quite a long time, and so thank you for inviting me here. I'm so impressed to see so many of you here, so many involved with the city's internship, and so many people, some young people with an interest in public service. So over 60 of you here today, representing 22 different departments, and as I understand it, most of the supervisors of those departments are here today. So if we could just give the supervisors a round of applause for being here and participating in their support. So let me just start with a question. My question, and this is to the interns, do you know what you want to do? Right? Show of hands, everybody who knows exactly what they want to do. Okay, not so many folks. All right? Do you know where your career is going to take you? Show of hands. No, not so many folks there either. How about last, and maybe the most important, how you're going to get there? Anybody? One person, okay? This brave guy. So I want to say that I appreciate so much Chief Walker Minor sharing her experience, part of her journey, and the mayor as well, sharing part of his journey. And what I'd like to do today is share part of my journey as a way of reflecting on those three questions. What is it you want to do? Where will your career take you? Right? And how will you get there? And I'll share a little bit, because I'm an academic, I can't help it, I'll share a little bit of what the research says as well to inform that. And I want to talk also about where that career trajectory intersects with leadership. Not because I set out to be a leader, but actually precisely because I didn't set out to be a leader. It came as a sort of surprise. Let me start with something that's extremely important to the job that I do right now, interviewing. Y'all been through interviews, right? Everybody here was interviewed? Why do we interview? Anyone say? Why do we interview? Why is that important? Get the best qualified person. This guy really does know where he's going. Get the best qualified person. Get the best qualified person. Absolutely. Who you have is what you can do, right? Who you have on your team, who knows you, who trusts you, and who you trust, that's what you can do. That's what you can accomplish, right? So over the course of my career, I've interviewed literally hundreds of people. I looked at my calendar, 60 people just last year alone. And every single interview, I tell people three things. The first thing I say to them is, I want you to imagine that there's a sign on the back of your door. So you can see the sign when the door is closed. And the sign says, it's not about you. Right? And so that means when somebody comes and they're irate and they're screaming and they're making a fuss, it's probably nothing that you did. But it also means that when somebody, actually has happened to me today, says, I had this great experience, you didn't do that by yourself, right? You had help, you had other people, right? So it's not about you. The second thing that I say is bend the system to your will. Bend the system to your will. Because if the system would automatically do the right thing on behalf of who you're serving, you wouldn't need to be there, right? Make the system do the right thing. And the last thing I say is that we hire, to your point, what we can't teach, right? You can't teach people to be interested in other people. You can't teach them to care about the work that they do, right? They have to come with that. Everything else, all the technical skills you can teach, right? So those are the three things that I say. I want to tell you a little bit about how I came to those things, right, in my own professional journey. So I'm going way back to graduate school, right? I had just finished a master's degree. I'm sitting in this little diner in Maryland, and I'm sitting across from my thesis advisor. We're having lunch or having whatever. And he looks at me and he says, I've been thinking about your career trajectory. I never even heard anybody talk about a career trajectory. This wasn't anything I thought about. He says, I think someday you might make a good president. Now I have to tell you that until that second, that moment, I had never thought about being a president or any kind of leader at all. In fact, I didn't even know this was something people aspire to. Like, who says, I want to be a president? It's crazy. But at that moment, it suddenly became possible for me because someone else saw it in me. And this is the point. The point is not that I had some special trait. The point is what he was able to see, leaders are able to see in other people, right? It's a key quality of leadership to be able to look at other people and see in them things that they may not see themselves. And then, of course, part of the job is bringing that out, right? And so that was the moment I sort of learned that first lesson, and I have to learn it and relearn it over and over again. But it was an important lesson of leadership is absolutely, as Chief Walker Minor said, relationships matter. And key part of that relationship is looking at other people and understanding what do they bring to the table and trying to bring it out. Listening to other people, understanding what's important to them. And a key part of relationships is mastery of self. Mastery of self, right? So I mean that in two senses. I don't just mean mastering skills. I mean being able sometimes to take yourself out of the equation, right? Being able to understand when someone is offering you feedback, criticism, being able to distinguish between what's painful, what's hurtful, and what's just uncomfortable. Because pain is your body's way of telling you something's wrong. I'm being hurt. Discomfort is just the price we pay to grow and learn, right? Now, I said I was going to share with you some of the research. So let me tell you what some of the research on leadership says. There's a professor at Stanford, a guy named Jim Collins, who wrote a book called Good to Great. He didn't start his research on leadership. He started his research on performance. How do individuals and how do companies perform at the highest level? And he looked at all kinds of possible variables and all kinds of possible ways that you could account for the performance. And what he finally came back to was leadership. And he talks about 5 levels of leadership. Level 1, right, is self-leadership. Mastering yourself, mastering your own skills, technical skills, being a contributing professional. Level 2 is leadership as a member of a team. You get along with other people, you contribute. Level 3, right, is being able to understand how you manage resources. Level 4 is inspiring people. But the top level of leadership is level 5, that is absolute professional will, but personal humility. Being able to master yourself. That's what's required for the top level of leadership. And although he's just departed, I've heard the mayor say this on many occasions as I've heard him over the years. He has his own inimitable way of saying this. He says, if you use your office, your role, your job for anything but what it was meant to do, then you're corrupt. Self-mastery. Bending the system to your will. When I became an administrator many years ago, I was working in Chicago, and I got this phone call. It seemed to come out of the blue, and it was from the chancellor of the City College of Chicago, and he says, "I have an assignment for you. You are on the short list." It was a very short list. "We need you to go down and help out a college that's in trouble." And I said, "Okay." Maybe some of you have gotten an assignment like this. I was expecting to get more detail. There was no more detail. I just got in my car, drove down, showed up at the campus. The entire campus was assembled in the auditorium. I walked in the room, and the vice chancellor pointed to the doorway and said, "That's your vice president." And that's how I started that assignment. And the assignment was really straightforward and simple, but really hard. It was to make sure that they had all of the classes they needed to run that campus, and they had all the people they needed to run the campus. And I thought to myself, how am I going to do this? And then I realized very soon into the assignment that the key was using the system, right? The key was understand how to make the system do the right things, because for many years it hadn't been. That's why they needed a turnaround. So understanding what is needed and being able to use the system is a key, right? Is a key to your success. Third story. So one of the questions I get in interviews is, how did you wind up here? And the way I see it, it's luck, it's education. Here's what happened. So I was in graduate school, and I was finishing what would be the first chapter of my dissertation, and I was talking about what was happening in my business. And the person that I was working with, my graduate advisor, said, I think all these things that you say are happening in this business, they might be right. I think that our business might be reshaped by technology. I think it might be reshaped by non-traditional students, those who are over 24. I think it might be reshaped by for-profit education. So he says, do you mind if I share it with somebody? I say, sure, why not? I don't think anyone's ever going to read this, right? It's a dissertation. And he shares it with a friend of his who's a faculty member. That week, the faculty member has lunch with the president of another community college. And this is the part that I know is as lucky as anyone can ever be. She actually reads what I've written. And the next week, she calls him and tells him, we have a job open, tell him he should apply. So, as Chief Walker Minor said, relationships matter. Relationships matter. But why she told me to apply is something that I found out later. It wasn't because I'd written such a brilliant dissertation. It wasn't because there were no other qualified candidates. It was because I had such a passion for what will happen in education, what is possible through education in terms of transforming people's lives. And in my own head, when I think about who am I, the name that sort of fits me best is teacher, right? That's the name that drives my passion. And what we know from the research is that if you seek out places where you find the intersection of your passion, right, you will find success. So if you look at a researcher named Martin Seligman, he talks about 3 kinds of lives. He talks about the pleasant life, right? The good life in the sense of there's pleasure. He talks about the good life in the sense that you are effective, that you are skilled, that you feel a sense of mastery. And then he talks about the meaningful life, right? The one that is driven by both passion and purpose. And it's that intersection of passion and purpose, right, that drives me and drives others who believe in public service. So I want to end sort of where I began, which is interviews. So, as I said, I have these 3 things that I share with everyone when I interview. And I get lots of different questions, and we always offer opportunities for questions. The question that I appreciate most is, what is it you enjoy about what you do? And the answer I give is really always the same. Anytime that you have an opportunity to do things that you really care about with people who also care about it and are skilled at it, and that can make a difference, right? This is really all that you can ask for in any job. So I thank you very, very much for allowing me to speak today.
I want to again thank Dr. Scope for that powerful message to each of you and the challenge on how to figure out how to bend the system to each one of your wills. I have to start remembering that even for myself. I would also like to thank you on behalf of the City of Cleveland, the Department of Human Resources, this mayor, Frank G. Jackson, and Chief Walker Minor for each one of your services. We appreciate the time and the energy that you committed to the departments. So let's give each of our interns a round of applause. I want to leave you with a quote that a colleague of mine shared. It's from J.J. Watt. It says, "Success is not owned, it's leased, and rent is due every day. Every single day, someone is coming for your job or your position. Someone is coming for your greatness. If you're the greatest, someone else wants to be the greatest. So if you're not constantly improving, then someone else is coming for you." What that means is you have to make a commitment daily towards whatever that you're focused on, whether that's school, whether that's a relationship, whether that's your career. You have to make a commitment every day for what you want. So no matter how you define your success, whether it's personally or professionally, be steadfast, be unmovable, and be always excelling towards that work. Thank each and every one of you.